Before this story begins, I want you to do one small thing that means everything to creators like us. If this story touches your heart even a little, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us bring more real, emotional stories like this to you. Now stay with me until the very end, because what happens in the last minutes will completely change how you see kindness, pride, and second chances. No one noticed the janitor until the CEO laughed. It was the company's annual Christmas gala, the kind of event where crystal glasses clinked, silk dresses brushed marble floors, and executives smiled without ever letting it reach their eyes. The lobby of the skyscraper glowed with gold lights and towering trees decorated in perfect symmetry. Music floated softly through the air, safe and polished. And in the corner, almost invisible, stood Mateo Alvarez, holding a mop, waiting for the night to end. Mateo had worked in that building for 6 years. 6 winters of early mornings and late nights, of empty offices and silent elevators. People passed him every day without learning his name. To them, he was just part of the background, like the walls or the floor. He was used to it. What he wasn't used to was being called onto a stage. The CEO, Richard Hale, was already half a glass past sober. A man known for ruthless deals and sharp words, Richard thrived on control. When he noticed Mateo quietly humming as he cleaned a spill near the stage, something cruel sparked behind his smile. "Hey," Richard said into the microphone, his voice booming across the room. "You there, the janitor." The room fell quiet. Mateo froze. Dozens of eyes turned toward him. "I hear you singing," Richard continued, amused. "Since it's Christmas, why don't you come up here and give us a song? Last Christmas. You know it, right?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. Mateo's face burned. He tried to shake his head, but security was already guiding him forward. I don't sing," Mateo said softly, his accent thick, his hands shaking. "Oh come on," Richard smirked. "It's just for fun. Or are you afraid?" Mateo had known hunger. He had known border crossings in the dark, sleeping in cars, working 3 jobs to send money home. But he had never known this kind of humiliation. Still, he thought of his daughter, Sophia, waiting at home, practicing English words by candlelight when the power flickered. He swallowed his pride and nodded. The music started. The familiar opening notes echoed through the hall. Mateo closed his eyes, and then he sang. At first, it was quiet, fragile, like he was afraid his voice would break. But it didn't. It grew stronger, warmer. There was pain in it, and longing, and something else the room hadn't expected. When he reached the chorus, something shifted. Conversations stopped. Phones lowered. Then, halfway through the song, Mateo changed the words. He sang the next verse in Spanish. The sound was rich and fluid, rolling through the room like a memory. People leaned forward. Richard's smile faded. Then Mateo switched again. Italian, smooth and melodic. Then French, soft and aching. And finally, German, clear and powerful, each word precise. 5 languages, 1 song, 1 man. When the music ended, the room was silent. No laughter, no clinking glasses. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Within seconds, the entire hall erupted. People stood. Some wiped their eyes. Mateo opened his eyes and realized his cheeks were wet. Richard didn't clap. Mateo stepped down from the stage and returned to his mop. No one stopped him. No one spoke. He finished his shift and went home on the last bus, replaying the night in his mind, wondering if he'd done something wrong. The next morning, Mateo was called into hour. His hands shook again. He thought he was being fired. Instead, the HR manager slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents, language certifications, music school records from years ago, scholarships he'd never been able to use. "How many languages do you speak?" she asked gently. 7, Mateo replied. 8, if you count English, I'm still learning. By noon, the video from the gala had gone viral. Millions of views, headlines everywhere. The janitor who silenced a CEO. The man who sang the world. Sponsors called. Media requested interviews. And Richard Hale's board called an emergency meeting. For the first time in his career, Richard was the one standing alone, exposed. The mockery, the power play, the arrogance, it was all there, captured from every angle. That afternoon, Richard asked to see Mateo. Mateo stood across from him in the same office he had cleaned 100 times before. The city stretched behind Richard in a wall of glass. "I owe you an apology," Richard said stiffly. "What I did was inappropriate." Mateo waited. "I didn't know," Richard added. About your background. Matteo met his eyes. You didn't ask. The silence was heavier than any insult. Richard offered him a promotion. A public relations role. A chance to use his talent. Matteo declined. I don't want to be a symbol, he said quietly. I want to be respected. Days later, something unexpected happened. Richard resigned. Not because he was forced to, but because he finally understood what power without empathy had cost him. The company announced a new initiative: education programs for staff, scholarships, internal mobility. Matteo was invited to help design it. This time, he accepted. Months passed. Matteo no longer carried a mop. He carried a badge that read Cultural Liaison. He still sang, sometimes, at community centers, at Sophia's school, at small gatherings where people listened because they wanted to, not because they were told to. One Christmas Eve, a letter arrived at Matteo's apartment. No return address. Inside was a simple note. Last Christmas, you gave me something I never had before. Perspective. Thank you. Matteo folded the note and smiled. Sophia tugged at his sleeve. Papa, she said, will you sing tonight? He nodded, and as his voice filled the small room, it carried something far greater than music. It carried dignity. It carried forgiveness. It carried the reminder that no matter how invisible the world makes you feel, your voice still matters. If this story moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe. You never know who needs to hear a story like this today.